speaker of the day, I should say, Corinne Warnshuis, and she is from Girl Develop It, and will be speaking about lessons learned from Girl Develop It.
Warm welcome for Corinne. Thank you very much.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much. Thanks for sticking around too. I know it's been a long day, but a very fun day. That was awesome, Steve. Okay, so as was mentioned, I'm Corinne from Girl Development, and and so we only have 20 minutes, so I'm going to try to really quickly talk about the work that we do with Girl Development, and the work that I do with Girl Development, how we've gotten more women into open source, and an open source mentorship program that we ran, what we learned from launching that program, some takeaways for your own community and projects, hopefully, how you can get involved, of course, and because it's going to be quite short, let's talk at the break and at the end about if you have more questions or ideas, or if you're just interested in learning more about Girl Development and what we do. So we offer opportunities for adult women 18 and up to learn web and software development through these in-person, hands-on classes that are both affordable and judgment-free and open to a wide diversity of people. And so we teach many subjects. We teach HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Ruby, Python, PHP, Git, and GitHub. And women come to classes to get their feet wet, to learn a little bit about this and a little bit about that, but they also progress in their skills over time. And Girl Development is not only classes, but we also run study groups. We do professional networking events where women can get access to learning about industry professionals and get a peek into some job opportunities that are out there. And so this community support is really essential, and it's a really essential part of Girl Develop It, because we help women continue their studies, boost their confidence when they get stuck. As you can see in, I think there was a laser pointer on this, but in that bottom picture, there's a bunch of TAs walking around, so if ever you get stuck, there's always a peer next to you that you can turn to and be like, oh, what is going on? Or a TA that you can flag down, or the teacher at the front of the class is always open to answering your questions, which is really important when you're learning a new subject. So we'll talk more about that, kind of how we cultivate that environment. But Girl Develop It is building these really amazing communities like the one that you just saw in 50 cities. So we're all over the country now. We have upwards of 48,000 members. I actually just checked, and we grew like 1,000 members in the last month, so really exciting stuff. And actually just wanted to give a few shout outs because Steve, who just was up here, is a Girl Develop It teacher in Denver, which is awesome. And I think we have a Girl Develop It chapter leader from Columbus here today. There she is, awesome. And also just, if anybody has ever been a teacher or a student or a TA or a mentor involved in some way in Girl Develop It, can you just like raise your hand? Hi, maybe? All right, cool, awesome. That's really great. Thank you, guys. So yeah, so we have people all across the country doing this really great work, and we're empowering more than 1,000 students across the country per month with coding skills. That's a huge number. That's, I think it's even like up to 1,500 at this point. And so in one of those 50 cities where I live in Philadelphia, we have like a very particularly vibrant community and chapter. They run like 7 to 15 classes and events per month. They do code and coffees and social gatherings. They do pair programming workshops. They've been around for almost 5 years, or almost 4 years rather, and they have 3,000 members. So they're actually the largest and most active tech meetup in Philly of all tech meetups, which is really exciting. So in this community, I'm very deeply involved because I live there. I've lived there for a while, and started to notice a growing interest in open source from our community. So first, many students are leveling up their skills over time, as I mentioned, over the past few months and years, and they're ready to take on that next challenge. So some are looking to make a transition from a non-technical career to a technical career. Some are just interested in collaborating on projects, and they're finding that many hiring companies were asking to see their Git and GitHub, or their GitHub page to see their contributions, and asking what projects they built or what projects they'd work on. So it was a need that hiring companies were asking for. And anytime we ran our intro to open source, or our intro to open source software, which open source hero Mark Head taught for us, it would just sell out immediately. And every time we ran intro to Git and GitHub, which is another one of our workshops, it would just sell out constantly every time we put it up. So we knew that there was like a real interest. And Philly in general has a very community-oriented, like socially conscious civic hacking community, and they have a really active Code for America brigade, Code for Philly. And they have all of these great opportunities to kind of like plug into the community and get involved in these projects. But we kind of found that even though our community is so active and doing so many great things and really putting themselves out there to learn, they weren't kind of crossing over and participating in this broader community of people doing cool work with open source. So we started to think about this issue and tackle it a few years ago, back in 2013, when a couple students started expressing interest in learning what a hackathon was all about. And some people were kind of like scared of that concept, just because of the word hack, didn't know what that meant or how they could break into that. So we got together with a few community groups and like Girl Geek Dinners and Pie Ladies to figure out what a hackathon should look like for our community and how that was different from other ones, how we could demystify this concept for our community. And we came up with this concept of lady hacks. So it was the very first all-women hackathon on the East Coast, as far as we know. And it was a huge success. There were 65 participants in the very first one, and 80% of them had never been to a hackathon before. And they built 7 awesome projects. And this brings me to like one of my favorite things about working with Girl Develop It is that we really just offer this space where women can come and explore and feel comfortable and learn about new things together, and just unlock their potential that's there. And to kind of flourish and find new skills that they might not have known were there. And so, whoops, wrong way. And so this is Leslie, and she was one of those first-time hackathon attendees at Lady Hacks in 2013. And she's a videographer who's interested in learning more about hardware specifically, but she actually at Lady Hacks worked on a web project to get more women access to resources of tech resources. And then a month later, and I should also say that we organized Lady Hacks intentionally 1 month before Philly Tech Week, which is like this huge annual gathering of tech conferences and events and things, so that they would be inspired to kind of go out into the broader community and just use Girl Develop It as a gateway to getting access and opportunities to be a part of the larger tech community. So a month later, she signed up for another hackathon. She felt like equipped with her experience from Lady Hacks and the confidence to sign up for the International NASA Space Apps Hackathon, which is like probably the craziest hackathon you could sign up for. But she ended up working on a project with a team, and this is it. It's called Sentiate. And what it is it's a kind of a bracelet that connects astronauts to the smells that they miss from Earth, like nature scents and food, so like trees and flowers and pizza or stuff like that. So, well, that's not nature, but it's a food scent. And so they used like an e-cigarette to distribute the scent. It was just really awesome. I want one. And they won 3rd place in this international hackathon. So that was just an awesome success story that she, felt compelled to go out and try new things. And then soon after that, Leslie started getting involved in some other things. She won 1st place in the Adafruit and Element 14 Wearable Tech Challenge, another international competition. And then now she's a regular contributor to Adafruit. And she was just selected as one of NASA's first part of their Datanauts Core, which is their program to engage enthusiasts with NASA's open data. So she's just doing amazing things, and it's really awesome to kind of see a story progress like that, where you just offer a space to kind of come and learn and find out about things and just see the potential that's there to be unlocked. And so from the success of this and stories from Lady Hacks and stories like Leslie's, we continued to see an interest from our community in getting involved in an open source project more formally. And so we started digging more into ways to engage our community and more deeply and sustain their engagement. So it was that like intermediate group of learners that we wanted to keep going instead of just bringing a bunch of beginners in. So just really quickly want to shout out my colleague in this, Kat Farman, because she's really awesome and she's not here today, but every time I say we, when I'm going forward, I'm talking about she and I, because we worked on this project together, and I highly recommend that you follow her on Twitter because she's very cool. But this is also just like an example. This is us at OSCON last year, and it's just an example of how fun the open source community can be. And then we're also going to get into a little bit of a bummer section, so I thought this would provide some levity. But stick with me because it'll come out happy in the end. So Kat and I started looking at the numbers, and we found that the issue was bigger than just Philly and bigger than our community. And according to the latest FLOSS survey, only 11% of open source contributions are made by women. So in short, diversity in tech is bad. Diversity in open source is really bad. So we started digging in more and wanted to find out what people were doing. So we found out about this program called Outreachy. It's formerly the Genome outreach program for women. And it's one that pairs women with mentors virtually online and just gives them engagement into the open source community. But as an organization for Girl Develop It, as one that really engages people in in-person opportunities, we wanted to see how we were uniquely positioned to kind of make a dent in this 11% number. And also the fact that we have such wide reach. You know, at this time last year, we were in 36 cities, and now we're up passing 50 cities. So we thought we might be able to make an impact. So first, we kind of asked ourselves, what's keeping women out? What's been working and what's keeping them from participating? And as I go through these kind of barriers to entry, I encourage you to think about your own kind of communities and the projects that you work on, and see if the barriers might be the same or what other barriers that might exist that you can work on. And so one of them I think we're all familiar with, and some intimately, is imposter syndrome. So its commonly understood characteristics are, you know, understating your experience or skill, feeling like a fraud, which can be pretty debilitating, not applying for jobs, not going out for promotions, and also just like not even entering spaces where your expertise or skills might be questioned, like tech meetups or hack nights. So that was one barrier. Another one that we found was a lack of safe spaces and like a welcoming environment for beginners and underrepresented groups to plug in. And Anwan and Katie talked a little bit about this, the criticism culture, just discrimination in general. And we know that, I think it was Computer World a few years ago put out a study that 63% of women in STEM fields have experienced sexual harassment. That's a huge number. And then 51% leave the tech industry mid-career, like oftentimes when they're hitting their stride. So we knew that codes of conduct were really important, and they're embedded in our classroom and our environment. And it wasn't until Lady Hacks that I realized that codes of conduct are not only to prevent bad behaviors from happening, but they're also a way to, they can be used as like an invitation, and they can set a baseline of, you know, mutual respect and aid and conflict resolution and community building. So after Lady Hacks, some women came up to me and said, "Thank you for posting the code of conduct. It made me feel welcome, like I belonged there." So I started thinking about how that was used as, you know, promoting inclusivity and diversity. And just, you know, being conscious, again, like Anne-One and Katie were mentioning, just being conscious of your surroundings and, you know, how you enter these spaces and what makes up these spaces that we all kind of inhabit is really important. And then the final one was unsustainable participation models. So hackathons are great and they spark an interest, but they're fleeting and they're over in a weekend. So with these barriers in mind, we decided to just try something. So we launched a program called the Open Source Mentorship Program. We piloted it in Philly last year. And the idea was to give sustained opportunities to women, intermediate learners, to make a bigger impact on an open source project. And hopefully addressing all three barriers, especially number 3, since we had made some headway on 1 and 2. So the basic idea of the program is that we got together we wanted to both help students and also provide leadership opportunities for mentors. So we got together some mentors, a lot of them from the local Code for America brigade, Code for Philly. We got a bunch of mentees applied. We found some open source projects, again with the help from Code for Philly. And then we hosted these weekly in-person meetings where you're sitting next to your mentor, you're all building skills together for 3 months in the summer. So it was every single week for 3 months in the summer. It was quite a commitment. And this is our first cohort of mentees. I'll tell you a little bit more about them in a minute, but I just wanted to kind of recognize them and show their names because they did some great work last year. One of the projects that they worked on was an offshoot of this project called Unlock Philly. And it shows accessible subway and transit outages for elevators, just because Philly is such an old city too. It has really bad infrastructure problems, especially for accessibility issues. So this was a really awesome project that they worked on. Philly also has notorious education issues, unfortunately. And so a group got together and decided to visualize the Philadelphia school district's budget. A few other projects that they worked on were Open Tree Map, which I think some people might be familiar with. It's a pretty big project. And then one that focused on some new health data sets that had just been released in Philly. And as seen on GitHub, we had 34 regular contributors who attended our events, who made contributions, who reviewed code. And many of them were folks that we had introduced to GitHub and got them started and got them set up, who had never used it previously or seen it. So that was really exciting to see. And just to highlight these, highlight some of the mentors really quickly. We didn't know this would happen, but this program, this 3-month program that we put together pretty quickly to pilot, it actually really changed these women's lives, which was really inspiring. So one of the mentees, Elizabeth, up there, she recently decided to go back to school to get a master's in computer science. And who do you think she asked to write a recommendation? Her mentor. And she got in, so now she's doing that, and that's really awesome. Another mentee has 3 young children at home and never had the opportunity to kind of go to our weekend or weeknight classes because of that commitment. And she knew that having a mentor is so important, so she decided to join this program and has been doing some freelance work. At least 2 of the other mentees, and maybe 3, have entered their very first web development jobs full-time. And Leanne, the one in the black at the end, she continues to work closely with her mentor on open source projects, and she's a mentor in this year's program. So kind of comes full cycle. And then finally, Ashley in the blue at the end there, she was a recent college grad when she started the program, and she used this experience to launch her career as a project manager, a digital project manager. And so she's also taken on a huge leadership role in our community and is running the open source mentorship program this year. They started it 2 weeks ago. And at least half of the mentors have come back to be mentors again. So as I mentioned, Code for Philly was really instrumental in helping make the program a success. So we reached out to Code for America, and we asked them if they'd be interested in kind of doing this program on a larger scale. So it's I think the Code for America has brigades in hundreds of cities, and we have about 50 chapters. So round 2 is happening in Philly now, and we're going to launch the same program in 4 other cities this fall. I think Burlington, Miami, San Francisco, and another one. So these individual stories that I was mentioning are really powerful and can be really transformative for these women's lives. But what's really exciting about the program is that it scales, and it scales really easily. So if we launch in 10 more cities next year, we're looking at making thousands of more contributions by women. And I know you're all dying to know how to get involved, so I'll tell you. You can find your local Girl Develop It chapter and find a way to get involved either as a TA, a mentor, a student, a teacher. But hopefully you've taken away from this that there are many more ways to get involved than just being a student. You can plug into the community to learn and grow and give back. And hopefully together we can all make open source a more welcoming place for people of all backgrounds. So please get involved and keep in mind some of those barriers that I mentioned when you go back to your own communities and see how you can make a change. Thank you.